On my son's wedding day, I woke up bald. My daughter-in-law had cut my hair while I was sleeping, just so I wouldn't look prettier than her mother. They had no idea I was hiding a $2.5 million inheritance. I'm glad to have you here. Follow my story until the end and comment the city you're watching from so I can see how far my story has reached. I woke up on my son's wedding day completely bald. For a moment, lying there in the dim morning light, I thought I was having a nightmare. My hand reached instinctively to my head, expecting to feel the silver waves I'd carefully maintained for decades. Instead, my palm met bare scalp, rough with stubble. The mirror confirmed my worst fear. 68 years of life, and I'd never looked more vulnerable. Patches of hair clung desperately to my scalp, as if someone had taken scissors, or worse, to my head while I slept. My reflection stared back hollow-eyed and unrecognizable. "Lauren," I whispered, my voice cracking. She'd done this. My daughter-in-law had crept into my room sometime during the night and butchered my hair. The realization hit me like a physical blow, doubling me over the bathroom sink. I'd spent weeks at the salon preparing for today, James's wedding day. The highlight treatment, the careful styling, the anticipation of finally feeling beautiful again after years of letting myself fade into the background. All destroyed in one malicious act. My hands shook as I reached for my phone. "James, I need you to come over immediately. Mom, it's 6:00 in the morning. The wedding isn't until your wife cut my hair off." The words came out broken, barely audible. Silence stretched between us. When he finally spoke, his voice carried that familiar edge of annoyance I'd grown to dread. "What are you talking about?" "She came into my room last night. She cut off all my hair." "James, I'm bald." Another pause. "Mom, that sounds... Are you sure you didn't have some kind of episode?" "Maybe you should." "I'm not having an episode." The words exploded from me, desperate and raw. Your wife attacked me in my sleep. When James arrived an hour later, Lauren was with him. She walked into my home with the casual confidence of someone who owned the place, her perfectly styled blonde hair catching the morning sunlight streaming through my kitchen window. "Oh my goodness, Evelyn," she said, covering her mouth in mock horror. "What happened to your hair?" "The performance was flawless. If I hadn't known better, I might have believed her concern was genuine." "You know exactly what happened," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. Lauren's eyes widened with theatrical innocence. "I have no idea what you mean, James. Your mother is accusing me of something terrible." My son looked between us, his face a mask of frustration. At 36, James had inherited his father's weak chin and my stubborn streak. But none of the backbone needed to stand up to the woman he'd married. "Mom, this is crazy." Lauren was with me all night. We stayed at the hotel, remember, for the rehearsal dinner. She could have come here after you fell asleep. "Why would she do something like that?" James's voice carried the patronizing tone he'd developed over the past 4 years, ever since Lauren had wrapped her perfectly manicured claws around him. I looked at my daughter-in-law, searching for any crack in her performance. "Because your mother-in-law didn't want me looking better than Susan today." Lauren gasped, pressing her hand to her chest. "Evelyn, how could you say such a horrible thing? I would never." "You told me last week that Susan was nervous about the photos, that she was worried about looking old next to the groom's family." "I was just making conversation." Lauren's voice rose to the perfect pitch of wounded innocence. "I can't believe you twist my words like this." James stepped closer to his wife, his arm sliding protectively around her waist. The gesture sent a cold knife through my chest. "Mom, you need to apologize right now." "Apologize?" The word came out as a whisper. "James, look at me." "Really? Look at me." He glanced at my bare scalp, then quickly away. "Maybe you should see a doctor. Hair loss can be a sign of stress. Or it didn't fall out. It was cut." "You're being paranoid, Mom. And frankly, it's embarrassing. Embarrassing. The word settled in my stomach like a stone. My own son found my pain embarrassing. Lauren moved closer to James, her voice soft and reasonable. Maybe we should postpone the wedding. Give Evelyn time to get help. No. The word burst from me with surprising force. Don't you dare postpone this wedding because of what you did to me. What I allegedly did? Lauren corrected, her smile never wavering. I stared at my son, searching his face for any trace of the little boy who used to climb into my bed during thunderstorms. You really believe her over me? I believe what makes sense, Mom, and this doesn't make sense. The silence that followed felt like a death. Standing there in my own kitchen, looking at my bald reflection in the toaster, I realized something had fundamentally shifted. I was no longer James's mother in any way that mattered. I was an inconvenience, a problem to be managed. I need to find something to cover my head, I said finally. Lauren's smile brightened. Oh, I saw a lovely little wig shop in Capitol Hill. Very affordable. The word affordable hung in the air like an insult. This from a woman who spent more on monthly highlights than most people spent on groceries. As they left, James paused at my door. Mom, please don't make a scene today. This day isn't about you. I nodded, not trusting my voice. After the door closed, I sank into my favorite chair and let the tears come. Hot, angry tears that had been building for 4 years. This day wasn't about me. Apparently, no day was about me anymore. The cheap wig itched terribly, but it was better than the alternative. I'd driven to 3 different stores before finding something that didn't make me look like a Halloween costume. Even so, the synthetic chestnut hair felt foreign and obvious under the chapel lights. Sitting in the 3rd row, not the first as the mother of the groom should, I watched Susan hold court in the front row. Her silver hair was professionally styled, her royal blue dress perfectly tailored. She looked elegant, distinguished, everything I should have looked like on my son's wedding day. Doesn't Susan look wonderful? The woman next to me whispered, so refined. I nodded and smiled the way I'd been trained to do for the past 3 years. Always smile, always agree, never make waves. The truth was, this humiliation had been building since the day James announced his engagement. I just hadn't wanted to see it. I remembered that first dinner when Lauren brought her parents to meet me. I'd spent 2 days preparing, cleaning my modest home until it sparkled cooking James's favorite meal. When they arrived, Susan had walked through my living room like she was touring a museum of poverty. How quaint, she'd said, examining my handmade curtains. It's so nice when people make do with what they have. Lauren had laughed that tinkling sound that set my teeth on edge. Mom, not everyone can afford a decorator. Even then, James had said nothing. He just sat there eating my pot roast, while his future in-laws cataloged everything I lacked. The secret they didn't know. The secret no one knew. Burned in my chest like a coal. 2.5 million. That's what my sister Margaret had left me when she died 2 years ago. Margaret, who'd never married, never had children, who'd built a small fortune through careful investments and a successful accounting practice. Promise me you won't tell anyone right away, she'd whispered from her hospital bed. Watch how people treat you when they think you have nothing. That's how you'll know who really loves you. Didn't guarantee anything. It certainly didn't guarantee respect. When the speeches began, James thanked Lauren's parents effusively. He talked about Susan's wisdom and guidance, about how welcomed they'd made him feel in their family. He mentioned his new father-in-law's business advice and generous spirit. He never mentioned me. Not once in his entire speech did my son acknowledge the woman who'd raised him alone, who'd sacrificed everything for his happiness, who'd driven here today wearing a cheap wig, because his wife had destroyed the one vanity I'd allowed myself. The applause died down, and I excused myself to the bathroom. In the mirror, my fake hair looked even more obvious under the harsh fluorescent lights. The woman staring back at me was a stranger, defeated, invisible, forgotten. But as I adjusted the wig, something else stared back at me from the mirror, something I hadn't seen in years. Anger. Pure, clean anger that cut through the hurt like a blade. I had $2.5 million sitting in a bank account that no one knew about. I had choices they couldn't even imagine, and for the first time in 4 years, I was ready to start making them. The question was no longer whether my family loved me. The question was whether I was finally ready to stop begging them to. The moment came during the cake cutting. I was standing near the dessert table trying to blend into the background when Lauren's laughter rang out above the crowd. She was holding court near the head table, regaling a group of wedding guests with what appeared to be a hilarious story. "Oh, you should have seen her this morning," Lauren was saying, her voice carrying that particular tone that made my skin crawl. "James's poor mother was convinced I'd snuck into her house and cut off all her hair while she slept." The group erupted in laughter. Someone gasped. "She actually accused you." Can you imagine? Lauren continued, placing her hand over her heart in mock distress. "The poor thing is getting so paranoid. We're really worried about her mental state." I felt the blood drain from my face. She was telling them she was actually standing there in front of wedding guests, making me sound like a delusional old woman. "Age can be so cruel," Susan chimed in, shaking her perfectly coiffed head. "Some people just can't handle getting older gracefully." "Exactly," Lauren said, her voice dripping with false sympathy. "We've been trying to be patient, but honestly, it's becoming a real burden on James. He's too sweet to say anything, but I can see how much stress his mother's behavior is causing him." Margaret, who'd been standing near me, gasped softly. "That's terrible," she whispered. "How can she say such things?" But I was frozen, watching my son's new wife systematically destroy my reputation in front of people I'd known for years. People who'd watched me raise James, who knew the sacrifices I'd made, were now hearing that I was a paranoid burden. "We've actually been discussing it," Lauren continued, lowering her voice to a conspiratorial whisper that somehow carried even further. "We think it might be time for Evelyn to consider assisted living. Somewhere she can get the care she needs. Assisted living." The words hit me like a slap. "That's probably for the best," someone replied. My aunt went through the same thing. Started making wild accusations, forgetting things. It was so hard on the family. I couldn't breathe. This woman, this cruel, calculating woman, was rewriting my entire existence, turning me into a problem that needed to be solved, a burden that needed to be managed. And where was James during this character assassination, laughing with his groomsmen 20 feet away, completely oblivious to the fact that his wife was destroying his mother's dignity, one lie at a time? Margaret touched my arm gently. "Evelyn, are you all right? You look pale." Before I could answer, Lauren's voice rose again. "Oh, there she is now. Evelyn." She waved me over with that brilliant smile that never reached her eyes. "We were just talking about you." I walked over on legs that felt like water. The group turned to look at me, and I could see it in their faces. Pity mixed with discomfort. They were looking at me the way you look at someone who's lost their mind. "Lauren was just telling us about your morning." One of the women said gently, "How are you feeling, dear?" The question was loaded with false concern, the tone you'd use with a confused child. These people I'd known for years were now speaking to me like I was fragile, broken. "I'm fine," I managed to say. "Of course you are," Lauren said, stepping closer and placing her hand on my arm in a gesture that looked supportive but felt possessive. "We're all here for you, Evelyn. That's what family is for." Family. The word tasted bitter in my mouth. Actually, Lauren continued, her voice taking on that bright, helpful tone that made my skin crawl. James and I have been talking, and we think it might be time for you to step back a little. You know, focus on yourself. Maybe it's time to retire from trying to manage everyone else's lives. The group murmured agreement. Retire from managing everyone else's lives. Sitting in my car, still wearing the itchy wig that covered my humiliation. I made a decision. Lauren was right about one thing. It was time for me to step back, but not in the way she thought. The lawyer's office smelled like leather and old money. David Carlson had been Charlotte's attorney for 16 years, and when I called him the Monday after the wedding, he fit me in immediately. I need to make some changes to my will, I told him, sitting across from his mahogany desk in my best dress, not the mother of the groom outfit I'd carefully selected and never worn properly. Of course, Mrs. Evans, what kind of changes are we talking about? I pulled out the manila folder I'd prepared. Inside were copies of everything. The original, will leaving everything to James, my bank statements showing the inheritance from Charlotte, and a new plan I drafted in my careful handwriting. I want to remove my son as beneficiary, I said calmly. David's eyebrows rose slightly, but his expression remained professionally neutral. That's certainly your right. May I ask what's prompted this decision? Let's just say, my family has made it clear that they don't value my presence in their lives. He nodded, making notes. And who would you like to designate as your new beneficiary? I'd thought about this for 3 sleepless nights. I want to establish a scholarship fund for single mothers pursuing nursing degrees. The irony wasn't lost on me. I'd worked as a nurse's aide for 13 years, one of my 3 jobs while raising James. It had been good, honest work, and I'd always regretted not having the time or money to get my RN degree. That's a lovely legacy, David said. We can absolutely arrange that. Will there be any provisions for family members? None. He made another note. Mrs. Evans, I have to ask, is this decision being made under any duress? Are you feeling pressured by anyone? I almost laughed. If anything, I was finally free from pressure. No duress, just clarity. The next item on my list was harder. I drove to Maplewood Realty, the real estate office where Janet Thompson had worked for 21 years. Janet had sold me my house when James was 11, and I trusted her discretion. Evelyn. Janet smiled warmly when I walked in. How was the wedding? I heard it was beautiful. Beautiful. Yes, I suppose it had been. If you ignored the character assassination and public humiliation, it was lovely. I said, Janet, I need to talk to you about selling my house. Her smile faltered. Selling? But you love that house. You've put so much work into it. I had loved it. Sitting in my car, still wearing the itchy wig that covered my humiliation. I made a decision. Lauren was right about one thing. It was time for me to step back, but not in the way she thought. The lawyer's office smelled like leather and old money. David Carlson had been Charlotte's attorney for 16 years, and when I called him the Monday after the wedding, he fit me in immediately. I need to make some changes to my will, I told him, sitting across from his mahogany desk in my best dress, not the mother of the groom outfit I'd carefully selected and never worn properly. Of course, Mrs. Evans, what kind of changes are we talking about? I pulled out the manila folder I'd prepared. Inside were copies of everything. The original, will leaving everything to James. My bank statements showing the inheritance from Charlotte, and a new plan I drafted in my careful handwriting. I want to remove my son as beneficiary, I said calmly. David's eyebrows rose slightly, but his expression remained professionally neutral. That's certainly your right. May I ask what's prompted this decision? Let's just say my family has made it clear that they don't value my presence in their lives. He nodded, making notes. And who would you like to designate as your new beneficiary? I'd thought about this for 3 sleepless nights. I want to establish a scholarship fund for single mothers pursuing nursing degrees. The irony wasn't lost on me. I'd worked as a nurse's aide for 13 years, one of my 3 jobs while raising James. It had been good, honest work, and I'd always regretted not having the time or money to get my RN degree. "That's a lovely legacy," David said. "We can absolutely arrange that. Will there be any provisions for family members?" "None." He made another note. "Mrs. Evans, I have to ask, is this decision being made under any duress? Are you feeling pressured by anyone?" I almost laughed. If anything, I was finally free from pressure. No duress, just clarity. The next item on my list was harder. I drove to Maplewood Realty, the real estate office where Janet Thompson had worked for 21 years. Janet had sold me my house when James was 11, and I trusted her discretion. "Evelyn." Janet smiled warmly when I walked in. "How was the wedding?" I heard. "It was beautiful." Beautiful. Yes, I suppose it had been. If you ignored the character assassination and public humiliation, it was lovely. I said, "Janet, I need to talk to you about selling my house." Her smile faltered. "Selling? But you love that house. You've put so much work into it." I had loved it. Every weekend for 16 years, I'd poured my free time into that little 2-bedroom home. The garden I'd cultivated, the kitchen I'd renovated penny by penny, the living room where James had done his homework while I worked my night shift paperwork at the kitchen table. "I'm ready for a change," I said simply. "Well, the market is good right now. Are you looking to downsize? There are some lovely senior communities. Actually, I'm thinking of moving out of state." Janet blinked. "Out of state? Where? Colorado? My cousin lives in Denver. She's been asking me to visit for years." It was true. Rebecca had been my mother's sister's daughter, and we'd stayed in touch through Christmas cards and occasional phone calls. When I'd called her yesterday, she'd been thrilled. "You should come for an extended visit," Rebecca had said. "I have a wonderful community here. Active seniors, book clubs, hiking groups. You'd love it." "I might need to make it permanent," I told her. "Even better. I have a guest room that's yours as long as you need it." Janet was still staring at me. "Evelyn, this seems very sudden. Are you sure you're not making this decision too quickly? Maybe you should talk to James first. James made it clear at his wedding that he thinks I need to find my own path and stop depending on him." I said, "I'm simply taking his advice." Over the next 2 weeks, I moved with quiet efficiency. I donated most of my furniture to charity, keeping only the pieces that held real meaning. My mother's china, Charlotte's jewelry, the photo albums documenting James's childhood. I didn't tell anyone what I was doing. Not James, not the neighbors, not the women from my book club. I simply went about my business, tying up loose ends with the methodical precision I'd learned from decades of managing crisis after crisis on my own. The hardest part was the storage unit. I rented a small space across town and filled it with boxes of James's childhood memories. His report cards, art projects, the Mother's Day cards he'd made me in elementary school with construction paper and crayons. "You're the best mom ever." One card read in his 6-year-old handwriting. "I love you to the moon and back." I packed it all away carefully just in case someday he wanted to remember who I used to be to him. The phone calls started 2 weeks after the wedding. First, it was just James checking in, his voice carrying that slightly guilty tone that meant Lauren had probably made a comment about him neglecting his mother. "Hey, Mom. Just wanted to see how you were doing." "I'm fine, sweetheart. How's married life?" "Great, great. Lauren is amazing. We're really happy." "I'm glad. Are you doing anything fun getting out at all?" The question was loaded with the subtext of our last conversation. Was I making my own life as Lauren had suggested? Was I learning to be less dependent? "Actually, yes," I said. "I've been quite busy." "Oh, good. What kind of stuff?" "Just taking care of some things I've been putting off." It wasn't a lie. I had been putting off living my own life for decades. The second call came when my house went on the market. Janet must have mentioned it to someone because James's voice was sharp with confusion. Mom, what's this about you selling the house Janet Morrison called Lauren and said you'd listed it? I'm making some changes, I said calmly. What kind of changes? You didn't say anything about selling. You're right, I didn't mention it. I'm learning to make my own decisions without burdening you with the details. There was a pause, burdening me. Mom, what are you talking about? Lauren made it quite clear at your wedding that I needed to stop depending on you and find my own path. I'm doing exactly that. I think there's been a misunderstanding. No misunderstanding, I interrupted gently. I heard her quite clearly, and she was right. It's time for me to build my own life. But selling the house seems extreme. Where are you going to live? I have options. Another pause, longer this time. Mom, you're worrying me. This doesn't sound like you. He was right. This wasn't like me. The old me would have asked his permission, sought his approval, made sure any change in my life fit conveniently into his schedule. But the old me had also believed that love and sacrifice would be rewarded with respect and consideration. The old me had been wrong about a lot of things. I'm fine, James. Better than fine, actually. I'm excited about this new chapter. New chapter, Mom? What aren't you telling me? Everything I thought. I'm not telling you that your wife is a cruel, manipulative woman. I'm not telling you that your wedding was the most humiliating day of my life. I'm not telling you that I have enough money to disappear forever if I choose to. I'm not telling you anything because you don't need to be burdened with managing my life. I said instead. Isn't that what you wanted? The call ended with promises to talk soon, but I could hear the confusion in his voice. Good. Let him wonder. Let him question whether he really knew his mother at all. Because the truth was, I was just beginning to know myself. They showed up on a Thursday morning. 3 weeks after I'd put the house on the market, I was in the kitchen packing my mother's china into carefully padded boxes when I heard James's key in the front door. He still had a key. Of course he did. I'd given it to him when he turned 16, and somehow it had never occurred to me to ask for it back, even after he'd made it clear I was no longer a priority in his life. Mom, he called out, we need to talk. My stomach tightened as I heard Lauren's voice float through the hallway. Evelyn, where are you? I dried my hands on the dish towel and walked to the living room where I found them standing among my packed boxes like invaders surveying conquered territory. Lauren was dressed in her usual perfection, a cream-colored sweater that probably cost more than my monthly grocery budget designer jeans, and those ridiculously expensive boots she was always showing off on social media. Hello, James. Lauren. I kept my voice neutral. What brings you by? What brings us by? James gestured at the boxes stacked around the room. Mom, this is insane. You can't just sell your house and disappear without talking to us. I'm not disappearing. I'm moving. Where? Lauren stepped forward, her tone taking on that concerned sweetness that made my skin crawl. We're worried about you, Evelyn. This kind of impulsive behavior isn't like you. Impulsive? As if I hadn't spent 3 weeks carefully planning every detail. I'm moving to Portland to be near my cousin Rebecca. James frowned. Rebecca, I barely remember her. You haven't talked to her in years. We've stayed in touch more than you know, but why Portland? Lauren asked. It's so far away. And with your episodes, don't you think you should stay closer to family? Episodes. There was that word again, designed to make me sound unstable, unreliable. I don't have episodes, Lauren. Well, no, of course not, she said quickly. I just meant, you know, the confusion at the wedding, the accusations. James shifted uncomfortably. Mom, about that. About what? I asked about your wife cutting my hair, or about her telling everyone at your reception that I was losing my mind. Lauren's perfectly applied makeup couldn't hide the flash of panic in her eyes. I never said you were losing your mind. I was concerned about you, that's all. You told a group of wedding guests that I needed assisted living. That's not... She stopped, collected herself. I think you misunderstood the conversation. I understand perfectly. I moved to the mantelpiece and picked up a framed photo of James's college graduation. I understand that you see me as a problem to be managed, a burden on your marriage, Mom. That's not true, James said, but his voice lacked conviction. Isn't it? I turned to face them both. When was the last time you called me just to talk, James, not because you needed something? Not because Lauren reminded you that you should check on your poor, lonely mother, but because you actually wanted to hear my voice. He opened his mouth, then closed it again. Exactly. I set the photo in a box. You've made it clear that I'm no longer welcome in your life as anything more than an obligation. So I'm removing that obligation. You're being dramatic, Lauren said, her voice sharpening. We never said you weren't welcome. You told me to find my own path and stop depending on James. I'm doing exactly that. I meant you should find hobbies. Lauren's composure was cracking. Join a book club, take up gardening, make some friends your own age. I didn't mean you should run away to another state like some kind of runaway teenager. I'm 67 years old, Lauren. I don't need your permission to make decisions about my own life. James stepped between us. Okay, let's everybody calm down. Mom, I think there's been a huge misunderstanding. We don't want you to move away. We want you to be part of our family. What family? The words came out harsher than I intended. The family that seats me in the back row at your wedding. The family that doesn't mention me in the groom's speech. The family that thinks I'm so unstable that I'd cut my own hair and blame someone else for it. I never said I thought you cut your own hair, James said weakly. You didn't have to say it. You believed her without question. You chose her story over mine without even considering that your mother might be telling the truth. Lauren crossed her arms. Because your story didn't make sense, Evelyn. Why would I do something so horrible because you wanted to make sure I didn't look better than your mother in the wedding photos? That's ridiculous. Is it? You told me yourself that Wendy was nervous about looking old next to the groom's family. I was making conversation. No, I said quietly. You were gathering intelligence. You were finding out what insecurities you could exploit. The silence that followed was deafening. James looked between us like he was watching a tennis match, his face pale with confusion. This is exactly what I'm talking about, Lauren said finally. These paranoid accusations. It's not healthy, Evelyn. You know what's not healthy. I set down the box I was holding and faced her directly. 35 years of putting my son's needs before my own, only to be treated like an embarrassment at his wedding. 35 years of working multiple jobs and sacrificing everything so he could have opportunities I never had, only to be told I'm a burden on his new marriage. Mom, James said softly. 35 years of love and devotion, I continued, my voice getting stronger, only to discover that it means nothing compared to 3 years of manipulation from a woman who sees me as competition for her husband's attention. I don't see you as competition, Lauren said, but her voice was too sharp, too defensive. Don't you? Then why did you need to destroy my appearance on your wedding day? Why did you need to humiliate me in front of people I've known for decades? Why did you need to make sure everyone saw me as the crazy mother-in-law instead of the woman who raised the man you claimed to love? Lauren's mask was slipping completely now. Because you are the crazy mother-in-law. You're possessive and jealous, and you can't stand that James doesn't need you anymore. The truth hung in the air between us like a live wire. There it is, I said softly. Finally, the real Lauren. James stared at his wife in shock. Lauren, what the hell? Oh, don't act surprised. She snapped. You complain about her constantly, how she calls too much, how she still treats you like you're 12 years old, how she makes everything about herself. I never said you said all of it. Every time she does something annoying, you come home and vent to me about it. You're just too much of a coward to say it to her face. I felt something inside me break. Not my heart that had been breaking slowly for years. Something deeper. The last thread connecting me to the son I'd raised. The boy who used to defend me against the world. I see, I said quietly. James's face crumpled. Mom, I didn't mean. Yes, you did. I picked up another box, surprised by how steady my hands were. And you know what? You're right. I have been possessive. I have been jealous. Because for 35 years, you were the center of my universe, and I couldn't accept that I wasn't the center of yours anymore. I looked at both of them, my son who couldn't meet my eyes, and his wife who was practically vibrating with vindicated rage. But I accept it now. So here's what's going to happen. I'm moving to Portland next week. I'm starting a new life with people who actually want me around. And you two can build your perfect little family without the burden of dealing with me. Mom, please, James said. We can work this out. No, we can't, I said firmly. Because this isn't a misunderstanding, James. This is who you've become. And I finally understand that no amount of love from me is going to change that. I walked to the front door and opened it. I think you should leave now. They didn't move for a long moment. Then Lauren grabbed James's arm and pulled him toward the door. Fine, she said, but don't expect us to come running when you realize you've made a mistake. After they left, I sat among my packed boxes and felt something I hadn't experienced in years. Relief. The worst had happened. The pretending was over and I was still breathing. In fact, for the first time in decades, I felt like I could breathe freely. 6 months after leaving everything behind, I was standing in my new kitchen in Portland, watching the rain paint patterns on the window, while fresh coffee brewed. My hair had grown back silver and soft, and styled exactly how I wanted it. No one had touched it but my new hairdresser, a lovely woman named Sarah, who didn't ask intrusive questions about my past. Rebecca had been right about the community here. Within a month, I joined a hiking group for seniors, a book club that met at the local coffee shop, and a volunteer program at the Children's Hospital. For the first time in my adult life, I was living for myself. The letter from James sat unopened on my counter. It had arrived yesterday, forwarded from my old address. His third attempt at contact since I'd left. The first 2 had been phone calls that I'd let go to voicemail messages full of confusion and hurt that I'd listened to once and then deleted. I wasn't ready before. Today, I thought I might be. Dear Mom, it began in his familiar handwriting. I've been trying to reach you for months. I know you're angry, and I know we hurt you. I'm writing because I need you to know that Lauren and I are having problems. I set the letter down and poured my coffee, adding the real cream I'd never allowed myself when money was tight. Through the window, I could see Mrs. Chen from next door tending her garden. She'd invited me for dinner tomorrow night just because she enjoyed my company. I picked up the letter again. Lauren has been different since you left. Colder, more controlling. Yesterday she told me I needed to choose between having a relationship with you and staying married to her. She said if I contacted you, she'd know I was choosing you over her. I almost smiled. Lauren's mask was finally slipping for James, too. I keep thinking about what she said that day at your house, about me complaining about you. The truth is, I did say those things when I was frustrated or tired. I would vent to her about things that seemed annoying at the time, but I never meant for her to use those conversations as ammunition against you. Too little, too late, I thought, but I kept reading. I've been thinking about when I was a kid after Dad died. Do you remember that night when I was afraid there was a monster under my bed? You didn't just tell me there was nothing there. You got a flashlight, and we searched the whole room together. Then you made me a monster spray with water and lavender, and you said, as long as I had that, no monster could hurt me. I remembered. He'd been 8 years old and so brave, trying not to cry while we searched every corner of his room. I realized something, Mom. You were my monster spray for 18 years. Every time the world felt scary or unfair, you made it safe again. And instead of being grateful, I grew up resenting you for it. I thought it meant I was weak, that I needed protecting. I didn't understand that it meant I was loved. The words blurred as tears filled my eyes, but I kept reading. Lauren never had that. Her parents were cold, distant. She doesn't understand what we had, so she saw it as something unhealthy, and I was stupid enough to believe her. I walked to the living room and sat in my new favorite chair, a soft blue recliner I'd bought because I liked it, not because it matched anything else. The afternoon light was fading, and I could hear Rebecca in her garden next door humming while she worked. I miss you, Mom. Not just because things are falling apart with Lauren, but because I finally understand what I lost when I chose to believe her over you. I lost the one person who loved me unconditionally, the one person who always saw the best in me, even when I didn't deserve it. The phone rang, interrupting my reading. Rebecca's number showed on the caller ID. Pet, dear, are you free for dinner tonight instead of tomorrow? My nephew is visiting from Seattle, and I thought you might enjoy meeting him. He's a widower about your age, loves to read. I smiled. Rebecca had been trying to set me up with various eligible men since I'd arrived. Convinced that I needed romance to complete my new life, she didn't understand that after decades of defining myself through other people's needs, I was enjoying the luxury of answering only to myself. That sounds lovely, I said, surprising myself. What time? After hanging up, I returned to James's letter. I know I have no right to ask for your forgiveness. I know I don't deserve it, but I'm asking anyway because I can't stand the thought of living the rest of my life without my mother. I folded the letter fully and set it aside. Then I walked to my desk and pulled out a piece of my own stationery cream-colored paper with my new address embossed at the top. Dear James, I wrote, thank you for your letter. It means more than you know to hear you acknowledge the mistakes that were made. I paused, thinking about what I wanted to say, how much I was willing to reveal. I need you to understand something. I didn't leave because I stopped loving you. I left because loving you was destroying me. For too many years, I made you the center of my universe while I disappeared into the background. That wasn't healthy for either of us. The words flowed easier than I'd expected. I've built a new life here. I have friends who value my company, activities that bring me joy, and for the first time in decades, I'm living for myself. I won't give that up even for you. I thought about mentioning the money, the inheritance that had made this new life possible. But some secrets were still worth keeping. If you want to rebuild our relationship, it will have to be on different terms. I won't be the mother who sacrifices everything for her child's happiness. I won't be the grandmother who babysits whenever you need a break, or the emergency contact who drops everything when you call. Outside, the rain had stopped, and the evening light was turning everything golden. But if you want a mother who's found her own strength, who can offer love without losing herself in the process, then perhaps we can find a way forward. I sealed the letter and set it by my purse to mail tomorrow. Then I went to get ready for dinner with Rebecca and her nephew. At the restaurant, I found myself sitting across from David, a retired teacher with kind eyes and an easy laugh. He told stories about his students, asked thoughtful questions about my move to Portland, and never once made me feel like I needed to justify my choices. "Rebecca tells me you're quite the hiker," he said over dessert. "I've been looking for someone to explore some of the harder trails with. Most of my friends think I'm too old for adventure." "I'd like that," I said, meaning it. "I'm just discovering that I'm braver than I thought." Walking home later, I felt a lightness I hadn't experienced since I was young.